Today I sat down with Ben Thomas, who is the Director of Apprenticeships and Training at Ascension Property Services. We spoke about the skills gap in the industry, a lot of the issues that are surrounding mental health and suicide on sites, and how he's working on bringing the next wave of industry leaders through, and everything in between. So let's jump into it. Welcome, Ben. Thanks for coming on to the CPC podcast. How are you? Are you well?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good man, good man. Obviously, look, you and I know each other relatively well. We work together on the recruitment front, and I thought it would be a great idea for you to come on and share your story.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to this opportunity.
Superb. So look, I'll throw some questions around and we have a good old chat and discuss many things that are construction and its problems.
Okay.
Superb. So what first kind of drew you, Ben, into construction? Because I know, and you'll tell your story in a second, I'm sure that yours isn't the kind of generic jumping into construction early doors. So what kind of first drew you into construction?
Well, interestingly enough, what drew me into construction was a mentor and friend. My previous career, I spent 20 years in the fire service, so I had a relationship with one of my key mentors. He retired, and the company that he was overseeing at the time, he was the operations manager. They were looking to address the void in electricians, and they were going to do that through training and education. So my background in the fire service working with him was creating training programs and things for the fire service, and that in turn, he saw that as a strength in me and said, hey, we want to build this training facility here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and we want to train the next tradesman, next electrician. So I put on my program management hat and joined his team in 2019. They built a facility. The ownership was key in putting a lot of resources, money, and time into building a state-of-the-art facility. And I was brought in, wrote the curriculum. I'm not an electrician by trade, so I utilized the strength of those around me, the key individuals, those that did the work every day to help create a curriculum. And we started that program in 2019 with maybe 10 or 12 apprentices. And now we currently have 75 apprentices across our platform. So it was an unusual journey into construction, and the basis for my knowledge in construction up to that point had been building construction related to the fire service, which, again, I've always, embraced and been fascinated with. But that's how I got started.
It's funny, isn't it, when you think of, like, I guess each person I ever speak to about this, and I've been, recruiting, as you know, in this sector for a long time, and there's so many different stories of how people kind of get into construction. And I guess, the phrase accidental is, fell into it accidentally. That's the kind of tends to be how majority of people get in there. I think as time's going by, you've got a lot of people now starting to look at construction as a career path.
Yeah.
But I think if you go back, a generation or so, it wasn't necessarily like that.
Yeah, I mean, and like you're saying, Jamie, the issues that are happening in the trades, and it's still, to me, it's somewhat of a crisis, is that there is a void. So, again, even coming up, I grew up in a time that the trades mattered. They were in the high school and they were championed, and, where the individuals around me, a lot of them worked in the trades. They did things with their hands. Probably, when I graduated high school, over the next 20 years, the trades started to leave the high school. So you didn't have that educational component, getting the youth to go into the trades. So now there's a crisis that everyone's trying to catch up to by just getting that reversed and having more individuals come into the trades. And another thing that you mentioned just now is also the pathways. They don't realize the opportunity they have to make a really good living. I mean, just right out of the gate, just as a tradesman. So yeah, I think it's, I know for sure it's something that I've been encouraged to champion and to bridge the gap and also build that pathway for those to continue in the trades and to make a really good living, which obviously on your end you see that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that, look, jumping straight into that situation, questions I had for you was always going to be around, the issues that we face with people coming into the industry, because, look, you and I operate in a similar space on different sides of that spectrum, and we see it a lot. We've spoke about it a lot, about the lack of and a skill shortage as such in the industry, both in the States and in the UK. We have the same thing. Do you think there's enough being done by the education system, the government, the local governments, whatever it is, to really try to bridge that gap? Because there is a big problem, specifically at the moment in the States, in comparison to what's happening in terms of the construction sector and projects and the amount of people that are actually there to fulfill those roles.
Yeah, Jamie, I do see a lot of resources and energy being put into this initiative in the States. And since 2019, I mean, right out of the gate, I realized that there was a lot of funding to support individuals wanting to come in through grants and federal funding. There's committees and groups. Currently, I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, and this week I'm chair of the Cape Fear Construction Sector Partnership Group here, and there's approximately 100 members of that group in this area that are trying to address what we're talking about. So there's the mindset is there, the energy of the I guess the government is there, and to some degree, I think the biggest challenge we're facing right now is just getting it organized in a manner, the efforts organized in a manner that there's something tangible that comes at the end of it. And I'll throw this out there and, for us to discuss as well. And it goes back to your arena, is that gap. We not only have a void in the trades, the boots on the ground every day, but we also have a void in that leadership component. And I do think that's one of the challenges that we're facing for not getting things to progress.
Yeah.
Is we have leadership that hasn't totally bought in to that void yet. They're still looking to address that void the way they're comfortable with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think, you and I have spoken about it many times, about the current issues and shortages that we've got across the leadership aspects as well. And project managers, estimators, it doesn't matter what it is, PXs, etc., the project executives, there seems to be such a shortage in kind of key areas that we operate now. We obviously look into different reports across the States as we operate in that market quite heavily, and certainly across Arizona, Texas, the Carolinas and Florida. It's abundant. There's a lot of stuff happening in the construction sector, specifically on infrastructure side and whatnot. But the amount of jobs that are being created against the talent that's available in those areas there's an astronomical gap.
Right.
And part of our remit is we're obviously trying to pull people from various different places within the States that aren't necessarily in those growth areas at the moment. But we see that, pretty much on a daily basis, that we've got clients that are asking us for all these different things for leadership for these projects that they've got, and they don't necessarily have them. So where do you see as a kind of fundamental part that we could be doing as an industry to kind of change that? Because it is a problem, and it is something that needs to be addressed.
I personally am moving towards, again, being an educator most of my career. I see the need to educate the current leadership. And again, that's learning things, working directly with you guys. One of the initiatives that they have in the Cape Fear region is awareness, is to change the current vision, what people perceive the construction industry to be. And I think it starts at the top, because my biggest challenges have been with the leadership of the business units. Again, very tenured individuals, very knowledgeable. They know their jobs well. But a lot of times in construction, what I found is their experience is what they base their decisions on for selecting key project managers, executive leaders, has more to do about how they have come up in the trades. I don't know if I'm tying it in together, but I think it's important that we get some acceptance from them and give individuals that you and I both have worked with an opportunity to prove themselves. But it is change. I mean, it is different. They come with a different set of skill sets. I see that bridging the leadership gap with younger minds and skill sets. And also the other thing that we've talked about is the money side of things. Anytime, if you come to the Wilmington area, the Cape Fear region is the second fastest growing coastal region in the United States. You're going to be looking for very sound quality individuals. So finances are important key to just kind of change your approach to the selection process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very tricky kind of area, isn't it? Because it's, you're an educator. We always find ourselves to be educators because it is constantly trying to get people to see that big picture as to what's actually really happening. Because I think sometimes business owners specifically can be quite isolated in their thought patterns and what they believe to be happening in comparison to what we're actually advising and can see this happening. And you're kind of in that internal stakeholder process whereby, you're kind of singing the same sort of tune that we are, but from an internal perspective and saying, look, we need to change a few hearts and minds in the business in order to kind of to reach that vision of the broader spectrum that we're trying to deliver. And it's, how do you find that in terms of kind of managing both, technically managing it up and down, right? Because it's a tricky thing to do in your role.
Yeah, the advantage that I've had, and I can speak highly for the owner and vice president that when I first came in, that he truly understood and continues to understand how all of this comes together and how work is completed in the field. So, from that perspective, he's very involved and taught me how to understand the field side of things. And for me, I brought a strength, at least I feel like I brought a strength of understanding people and being able to see their strengths and their weaknesses. Initially, I worked specifically with apprentices. The first green, don't have any experience whatsoever, straight out of high school.
Years, as they say.
Yeah, and I, through my fire service experience, if you think about it, that's who we were. I mean, we were taken as an 18-year-old who wanted to do this job. It's a blue collar job, and we were taught certain skill sets, and then we were put into more of a mentorship role. And then you gain the experience. So taking that concept initially and applying it to the trades, getting them to start working towards a higher level. But then, to answer your question, you start to see as the mentor side, I think, is important. You start to see that mid-level management, your superintendents and foremen, how they think, how they manage people. And then you move into the administrative side, and I learned to tie all of it in together, how the decisions were made from a project management standpoint, how it affected the superintendents, how it affected the foreman, all the way down to, the apprentice. And so for 7 years now, I have just been able to see that whole process, everybody involved in it, is a valuable part of the end. And again, I do not have any concerns whatsoever about improving the trades through apprenticeship programs. What I do have concerns about is the 5th year mark for them, and how we, again, back to our point of one of the big points of our discussion is changing the leadership mindset that they can do a lot. And then with you guys, the same is true with your any of the project managers you send to me, or any position normally is going to be an administrative role. I think I have learned that we're failing in that area to when we bring them in, to properly train them and our processes, take the time with them, and set them up for success. So again, just it's a completely different audience, but it's still very important to not leave them behind. And I do see a lot, primarily most of the project managers that I've worked with are not from, Greensboro, North Carolina. They're not next door. They're from California. They're from Arizona. They're from other places. So they bring their whole different mindset and come in, that we just have to embrace them.
Yeah, I think something you pointed out there is that and I think a lot of businesses do this, Ben, right? It's, as a recruiter, we tend to kind of hear this same thing from candidates when we're, moving someone from one position to another, is that, leadership don't listen to what we're advising, or we don't feel part of the team, or, something of that equivalence, right? And I think if you look at any business, I think one of the biggest problems that they have at that mid-management level, and the reason that there's a kind of disconnect between the people in the field and leadership of the business, is that those mid-management people aren't feeling like they're being listened to. I think most businesses tend to have almost a problem where they bring these people in expecting that they know what they should be doing, rather than kind of going through that training structure to really kind of bring them into the business and how you guys operate, and I think that's a major problem. How do you kind of see that being bridged? Because I know, your role is vast and changes and whatnot. How do you see that being bridged?
Well, first off is creating a plan. Again, I feel like that I have to sell that concept to key leadership people, so that they understand that it's better to be proactive and take the time to have a plan when someone comes in, and really keying in on the area I'm most knowledgeable of, and it's across our platform, is project managers. And again, creating a plan for onboarding them, teaching them our systems, teaching them our values, our core values. I'm very much a common sense thinker, fundamental things, and to your point, making them feel like they're a part of a team.
Yeah.
And introducing them to the team, all aspects of it. And again, I have had 7 years to do that. But I have been on the receiving end of going into a job where they put you at a desk and they say, here's your computer, here's your, this and that, and yeah, just go. And it's very prevalent in construction.
Yeah.
There's not, unless an individual goes to a 4-year college, and even with that, you go to a 4-year college, you get a certain set of skills, or even masters, or higher. But you're still going to have to walk into a office in a building and have a team with you. And I just sticking with the core values of caring about a person, culture. Culture is the big thing, and how they think, and what experiences have they had. I think project management and even higher up in the construction truly have a unique set of experiences and skills based on where they're at, and it's important as they move to fill voids in other companies, that company takes a minute and values what experience they have and how they can bridge it into their world.
Yeah, almost like a 360 process, right? Whereby,
yes.
And I think that's another area where I think some business leaders are quite naive. They're not necessarily, absorbing information on a 360 sphere. We tried to do that, and we've made lots of errors in the past, whereby, you bring somebody in, you're expecting them to kind of fit into your mold no matter what, and also leaving them to kind of their own devices. Whereas realistically, in order to get the best of everybody, it's about kind of absorbing the information that person's got, but it's like a two-way funnel. You're constantly sharing knowledge and experience and advice and whatnot, because that allows that person to first off feel valued, fit in properly, but probably therefore give their all into that role because they feel accepted into it.
Yeah, and Jamie, you guys, since the first day that I interacted with you, which I think we're going on 3 years now at least, what stood out to me was you guys were really doing a key component of what I was thrusting, to do. I had not done recruiting at the level in construction and was told, make this happen. It is kind of the same thing I was just talking about. We're growing, so we need 3 of these, 2 of those. I had never done it before.
Well,
And
you were a natural, Ben.
I will tell you, what I was challenged with utilizing somebody outside of the organization to assist me, especially because obviously you guys have a job to do, and there's always a risk with the individuals that you guys work with. Nothing is perfect, but there is a higher risk for not to making a poor decision. Let me put it that way. So I was looking for you guys to someone that understood where I was at and cared about their clients. I mean, I value that above everything, and had experiences with other groups that didn't. You could tell, I mean, just by the way that they were talking is, at the end of the day, I have to be the one, just like you guys. If it goes well, it's a win. But if it doesn't go well, what did I do wrong that got us there? I take ownership of it. So, and I do believe that is a core thing that makes a company strong, is there's trust.
Yeah.
So your work, in bringing clients into us, it was almost a part of the vet. It is a part of the vetting process, still is, and that I can take that and continue to build on it. And like I said, the failures, and I've had them where I've seen it fail, is back to what we were talking about, is that the company still has their part to do to make sure that individual is vetted properly, but is given the resources and the knowledge, no matter where they're at in their career. I mean, yourself, you could work with typically we're working with people with 20, 25 plus years of experience right now in these positions. There's no in between. I mean, I'm not seeing it. So, there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of, people are very comfortable with how they do things, and we just have to make sure that we're doing our part to foster that relationship, and realize that you can't just sit them at a desk and go, hey, have at it. We'll come back to you in a week or 2 to see if you're still here.
I tell you what, go back to your early career, because you mentioned a couple of things, so it's kind of spurred a couple of questions. I guess first off, one thing, what would be like a mistake that you felt that you made early in your career that kind of turned into quite a valuable lesson?
That's a great question. Something that I made a mistake in, I will be honest with you, and it does very much relate, trusting leadership, that they know the right thing all the time. Again, in my fire service career early on, I aspired to inspire others. So I went into training and mentorship at 25 years old, and had good mentors immediately with me. But I in that particular realm, when you're dealing with people every day and you truly believe in a process to make them the very best that you can, you trust that the administration and others that are working with you believe in the same thing. And unfortunately, what happens is it's very much related to our conversation. Over time, that trust is sometimes broken, and you have to stand in front of those people and, one, uphold what the organization is doing, but I've always been honest with those in front of me and told them how, it was tried to be transparent, and it's cost me. I mean, it's cost me some gray hair and probably lost some years off my life. But I learned from those lessons because, when you're in the people business, you still have to realize that you're not in control of everything. And you have to roll with the punches, and you have to continue to get individuals to move forward even on the bad days. But I would say that trusting too much was probably my biggest learning lesson in a very, like I said, 20 years I spent doing it. And I came to my current role through a mentor that I really believed in what they do, and it was trying to find that trust again is the reason I did it.
Yeah. Well, like you say, that is a valuable lesson. That's something that kind of opens your mind up to life, right? Not just work as such. And I think it is, trusting somebody too much can sometimes be costly. But as a human being, you have to learn to trust in order to get by, right? So it's that level of balance of understanding where you're at. And I guess that you as somebody, you've always struck me as somebody that really cares. You do care. You mentioned about how when we first started working together, the relationship you built with Dan was really, really fundamental within the business. But you really care about the people that you bring into the business, whether it's the senior management that you brought in, or whether now that your roles specifically kind of going down into the apprentice route. You did something similar in the fire service. So is that when you realised that this was the right kind of career path for you, going down the apprentice route, because you felt that you could really give something back to the youngsters coming in?
Well, it's very rewarding, and it's just something I've always been really good at. And again, when my mentor Mike Wright, who's a phenomenal person, so Mike's a phenomenal person, but just being able to come to work every day and have someone that believes in the things that make me happy, which is the core values, and has really an unwavering ability to make sure that's the fundamental thing we do every day. So I enjoy the apprenticeship process immensely, but I do think it's all inclusive in how we move forward. That, case in point, right now I'm working with a company that the foundation of their workforce is in need of some tune-up. You can't bring apprentices in if the leadership is not able to sustain it and keep them in place. We are humans, and everyone that comes in any trade, and you can apply this to any trade, any business, no matter what. The people are the most important asset, and I have proven that, and it's a team effort, but we have proven that if you train them, if you educate them, if you make them feel a part of a team, which are just fundamental things, they will knock walls down for you. And now, what we have to do in order for it to be sustainable, and I've seen, like I said, it's a trust thing that I've learned the hard way. But even in something as like the fire service, where most people get into it because it's really cool. It's a great profession. Just like construction, if you really go down the road every day and you see, like, that is really cool, you'll meet those individuals, and that's why most people get into it, and they have pride in their work, and they believe in their work, and they find joy in it. And sustaining that life lesson that I learned is you're going to have moments where the people that and the direction you're going in, you're going to be let down. And I think that that's just life. I mean, that's the way it is. So I learned quickly to try to find tools and things to help individuals in that process. But for the construction side of things, and I hope I'm getting to the question that you asked, but you have to have the whole thing, the whole plan, bumper to bumper. You have to be able to see that your leadership is a part of that first year apprentice's journey. Again, the mid-level management's journey. you have to make sure you don't leave any person behind in that process. And I think we really need to focus as much attention on that upper end as we are with the apprentices, because we're doing a pretty good job with that, at least I feel like.
Yeah.
But we got to get that mid-level and up involved in that, bumper to bumper process.
Yeah, I think you're completely right, and something you mentioned earlier is that if you've got the leadership within a business, whether that's kind of mid management all the way up, and you're bringing in apprentices that are going to be the new lifeblood as they are of any good business, you have to have that right culture in the business to be able to have those people stick, right? Because the problem you've got with the Generation Z or whatever it is nowadays is that they've got quite a poor reputation for sticking things out, right? But I do think that there's also an element of generations above that being a bit stuck in their ways. So it's almost like a clash of cultures internally within a business that if you don't get right, I think can be a problem. And for me personally, I tend to see that it's not necessarily a crisis, but it's certainly a problem across the whole of the construction sector.
Yeah.
That needs to be kind of ironed out, right, as quick as possible in order for a business to prosper.
I agree, and you, Jamie, you hit the nail on the head. It's a two-way street, and we do need to work on. I mean, I've firmly, after 7 years, and now moving into more of a role of specifically working with apprentices. Like I said, the current project that I'm on, if I can't get leadership to meet the apprentices in the middle, it's set up for failure. I hear a lot of times about the apprentices being not committed. I don't see it. I don't see it until they're probably the 5th year, we're starting to see some tension with that element, and it's because of the leadership's inability to change their thought process and allow them the opportunity to move and grow. And again, I don't want to take away from the work that you guys do from the upper echelon, but if I had, and I can give you an example, if I have a project manager right now that's early 40s, successful, that's like a diamond in the rough, but they're doing good work. They too want to be a part of that apprenticeship process. They too want to share their knowledge and their abilities. And I've seen it recently where upper management will say, well, they don't have time to do that. They've got to stay focused on the project. They got to, therein lies another problem where even those individuals that want to mentor, want to help somebody out, it brings joy to them. It is. And I embrace those individuals and will try to get them involved because that is how we sustain things and keep things moving forward. But a lot of times the key leadership will say, well, we don't have time for that. We've got, because construction is time driven, dollar driven. And I do understand that, but your team will begin to break down and morale will be impacted if you don't allow some of these key development things to happen.
Oh, 100%. I think the collaborative approach there is key, and I think that's another issue that we tend to see within in the business. So there's a kind of twofold problem that I see there, and I see this in a lot of businesses whereby you've got project managers, you've got that kind of mid-management area where they want to share their knowledge, they want to get these guys involved and try to push them, but they're under so much pressure and an intense pressure, like you say, because it's dollar driven, because you're behind budget, you're behind on time, that they just don't have the ability to be able to do that, which creates the tension, and therefore then they're expecting people to kind of do things that may be outside of their remit a little bit, right? On the flip to that, we then tend to see the opposite side to that, where you get, like you said, 5th year apprentices that they're ready to come out of the cocoon as butterflies, right? They're ready to fly. And the person said, no, you stay in that cocoon, you stay in that cocoon. And what ends up happening is they say, I'll tell you what, I'll break out the other end and I'll piss off somewhere else because they get frustrated. And I think there is that disconnect of that, that ability to be able to allow somebody the space to grow when they're ready, but nurture where it's also necessary. And it's a really difficult kind of space to get.
It is.
Almost needs a bit of special sauce in there, Ben, to get it
Yeah,
right.
it's a special sauce, and again, I saw it early in my career in the fire service. But what we did a really good job of is that you had a pathway process that's hundreds of years in the making, to where, at the fifth year you can take this test and do this, or you can promote to this, you can drive the fire truck, or whatever. And so taking that same concept into I believe that construction is almost identical to the fire service in what the outcome should be. It's this very much the same concept, but construction in general is years behind on that mid and upper level management education component. There's so back to what we were originally talking about. I'd see them that they're throwing resources. All of the educational institutions, the government entities, are throwing resources at primarily the entry level employees. So now, and it's taken me a minute, but now over the past couple of years working with you guys, and again being in a company that's growing so rapidly that we've doubled in size. One of our the business unit primarily that I've worked with you guys on doubled in size over a 2-year period, and suddenly you have all these key leadership positions that you haven't planned for. So back to, again, working with you guys, finding a group that there's trust between us, and taking individuals in. And I still do look for key characteristics in people. I still look for, primarily work ethic, good attitudes, open-mindedness. And I believe, I see it. I mean, they're there. I mean, we're bringing them in, bridging that gap of the needs for the business unit from an administrative standpoint to grow. And then it's like you said, where's the special sauce that you put in there that binds it all together? And we haven't found that yet.
I think that one thing is a mindset situation, right? And I think it's that individual mindset where you have to remember, and I live by this motto: you are the man you hate, right?
Yeah.
Because you were once either an apprentice coming through a trade, or even if you came in as an educated kind of mid-management level, you still were the junior, and you always still needed that person to guide and to show you and to let you fly.
Yeah.
So it's a cyclical event. So you're kind of almost stopping yourself from being that person, and I think by having that mindset shift where you are open to being like, yeah, Christ, I was you at one stage, so I'm going to help you to get to where you are, because that's going to benefit me. If you're more capable in your position, then it's only a better thing for the team, for the business.
Absolutely. I want everyone to be better than me. I mean, that's the concept. And again, construction, I have learned is there are egos. There are a lot of egos. And they, in their element, they work phenomenal. Most individuals that have been very successful in this started in the ditch. They started, at the very beginning. They've earned their way up. So, and I would never take away from that. That is a valuable part of who they are. But I do think in construction, there tends to be a closed-mindedness at times. Again, that has to be worked on, and education for change, and making that individual comfortable with that change. I see it as a two-way street, like we've talked about. I have never discounted anything that anyone has given me advice on. I tried to be open-minded about where they're at, and because ultimately they do have a lot of pressure on them. They have a lot of pressure. Any construction company group, at the end of the day, it goes down to planning a job well, having a good team, executing that plan, and staying within a budget. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. How do you motivate the team, right? Because obviously, look, you mentioned there's the planning aspects of it, and obviously making sure that you're kind of doing all the right things. But construction's tough, right? And it does get difficult. How do you motivate the team around you and yourself ultimately when things get really tough? Because we've discussed and spoken in tough periods. So how do you really kind of keep that motivation going?
Well, there's good days and there's bad days. The first thing is back to the lessons that I've learned is patience. That's number one. You know,
You got to have that in abundance, right?
yeah, I like to have things done. And if I see it, I feel like we should move pretty quickly on it at times. But I've had to learn patience, and I almost say it's like a reset. Which again, I've been a part of. Recently there's a couple of resets where you are allowed to go in and talk about the core values and ground everybody back into the reason we're here. This is why we're here. The other thing that we have to be mindful of, and this is unique to, is something I've had to learn, is certain leadership, individuals in leadership that are managing maybe that group, like the foreman on the job, if they're not doing their job well, it's usually a key area you need to change. You can't leave that person in there and set them up for failure, especially the well, on any job. But your leadership changes need to be thought out and made quickly if there's a problem.
Decisive action, right? I think is key.
Yeah, lack of action, lack of, a lot of times you'll hear, well, we need to get that job finished, so we're going to leave this as it is and keep moving forward. And I have seen that to be a work against, everything I believe in. This is not working. So I do think I've made a lot of progress in my world with the upper echelon and leadership to say, hey, give me a chance to go in there and what I call recon and figure out, how can we change this up? Because again, the ones who normally will leave are the ones you want to keep.
Yeah.
That is a problem. And the one or two that are creating all the problems, again, most of those individuals, and I'll hear this a lot, and Jamie, I know you hear it, we need experience. They need to have 25, 30 years doing this, or they don't know anything.
You want me to find you a unicorn
yeah.
somewhere. All right, yeah.
Yeah. And you got to have a great attitude and tuck their shirt tail in, and and you're like, okay.
Laugh at my jokes, be able to smile at the right client, be here on time. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, that person out, and I do see that is, they need to be me, and that does not exist. There is no me. There's one Ben, there's one Jamie, and so yeah, that unicorn doesn't exist. And just you got to take a minute and maybe build that unicorn yourself.
Yeah, and you just said something there that's so fundamental. I think I would say any business owner, any kind of key person in a business that has hiring decisions, that you have to accept that nobody else does the job the way you do it, right?
Absolutely.
As I was growing Just Construction, Tony and myself, we both have different roles, and mine was very much something whereby you're putting people into key positions and you're building people in, and I'd get so frustrated with these people, like you're not doing it how I want it done and how I expect it done. And it took me so long to realise that you are no man is an island. It's just you. You're the only person that can do it how you want it done.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of be willing to make concessions where you're training people and bringing people into a role, because if you don't, then you're going to be forever seeing those people recycle.
Yeah, and you realize too, back to the concept that we're going to leave this alone and make it work with who we have, with this this person, this leader on this job. What you find is you're going to lose. There's no way around it. I mean, you can almost predict like where the job is going to tank at, and with that, it's again, I'm not speaking for I'm not saying that every construction company in the world is like this, but I do think the ones that are really successful make a quick adjustments. And the other thing that we have to work on is not putting so much on those individuals, those unicorns, because again, watching several companies, you see those individuals that are in the office for 55, 60 hours a week, and
Burnout,
again,
sorry.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pride in what they do, and they, a lot of the people that are successful in this business, they truly do earn it every day. And but again, there's no line of unicorns behind them,
Yeah.
so you do have to be mindful of burnout. And a lot of times, I'm sure the clients that you work with, that probably is one of the things they talk to you most about, is they want to be in a culture that values them, and work-life balance. And man, that's a unicorn word there, but you know what I'm saying? It's important, because a person can only do so much, and this is really and truly a team thing.
But do you find then, Ben, that there's like, rightfully, like you just said, that it is a team effort, and when you've got that star player, it's like the MVP, right? You've got that person there, and that's fine, but you don't hang everything on that person, because it is a team game, right? But something I tend to see is that it's a very male-dominated environment. I think it's
Yeah.
86% or 87% of construction in the US is men. And you've got this macho bravado, right? Of like,
Yeah.
don't be such a pussy. You should, what do you mean you're going to watch your
Yeah.
daughter's recital? You shouldn't be doing that. You should be here grafting, because we've got a project to do. And it's like, well, this project's going to come and go. My daughter's, got to.
Right.
And it is that balance. And I think sometimes, specifically men, they take on too much of a burden trying to appease that macho bravado. And then, as we've seen, sadly, large amounts of suicide and stuff in there.
Yes.
So getting that balance right to not, I guess, over bombard somebody. So, do you see that as something that's a problem in the industry?
Absolutely, and going back to, again, that's probably the number one lesson that I learned is I did that in 2014, when I was still in the fire service, took that everything you just described. And my profession it was 24/7. The role that I had, they had to have me. They couldn't do it without me, and I was one of those individuals that sacrificed my family and my mental side. And yes, I see that as a common thing in the United States. I can't speak for the UK, but that it's not, it's the male bravado concept. It's also how things have been managed for hundreds of years, that individuals take sole ownership of things and are expected to work. I mean, the number of times that I was told that I was expected to work, even now, this is just what's expected of you, and we take for granted the mental impact. I mean, a person can only take so much, and I'm not too proud to say that, I met my match in 2014 and had to do a self-reflection. I wasn't happy. And I do talk to individuals personally, one-on-one. I have conversations this week about exactly what we're talking about, that if an individual is working 55, 60 hours a week, and that's a flag for me. I'm like, hold on a minute, how are you doing? Is everything, you can see the stress on them. And so I do believe that the suicide rate in construction is something that can be managed by having conversations, or building on conversations like we're having right now, which is, again, bring awareness to it. There's common reasons why that it is a factor.
I tell you what was really something that was eye-opening for me. Right, we had a lady on the podcast who, in her role within the business, was really focused around the kind of, not only the physical aspects of, she would come from a health and safety and environmental quality side, but she mentioned that the business really started to focus on the mental aspects when they sadly lost somebody on a tragic event on a project, and then didn't really understand the situation with the people around that person, specifically people on site. And one of his friends ended up basically killing himself, because I think he was somehow involved in that situation. And then something that business did, and I was like, that is a great idea, that they basically employ a pastor, pastor, however you say it,
Yeah.
a priest or whatever it is, somebody of religious connotation who's basically on his hard hat, your little cross on his hard
Yeah.
hat. He's there and he's talking to people on an ongoing basis,
Yeah.
not just about God and religion, but about human beings and about your mental state. Because and they found for 15 years they've had this person working, and she swears blind that has had such an impact on.
Absolutely. I think it's phenomenal. I mean, and it's cutting edge for the construction industry for that group to do that. It is cutting edge. The fire service has always had chaplain presence, but to be honest with you, it's something that again can only go so far, and to have someone in that capacity, like you said, whether they're strictly there to guide somebody in their beliefs or to just check on them, just to make sure that things are going okay. I again, back to my mentor, that's why I've loved working with him for all these years, because it has always been about people first, and we would ask questions and make decisions. Together we made a lot of decisions over the past 7 years based on the well-being of the person. And in construction, a lot of times we fail to realize that, a lot of these individuals travel. They have to travel. They are under a lot of pressure. They're away from their families. If I see behavioral changes in individuals, I try to know them well enough that, I ask a question, how are things, what's going on? We don't have any idea what's going on in people's lives. And you have to take a minute and just try to say, hey, I'm here, and it's okay to talk, and have someone in your organization that I'm always available. Just let me know what's going on. And then from a leadership standpoint, and this is a challenge sometimes, because again, a lot of our individuals in key roles like superintendent, for example, on a job site, and they have a timeline, that's what they see. So if you come to them and say, this person is having a bad day, boss, we need to, they may or may not care. And again, that's across the platform, and educating top to bottom that, one, it's okay to say something, and then two, if you are told something,
you need to deal with it.
Well, you need to seek resources, because most people with mental health is that when they are presented with that, and I can see this in the construction industry as a real issue, is they don't have the tools in their toolbox to manage it.
Yeah.
They don't have anyone that they can send that person to. We do our best in our companies to educate people on employee assistance programs, but I'll be honest with you, they're that's a hit or miss thing. I think that if someone has an issue in the mental side of things, or their behaviors change, it's paramount. I've lost friends to suicide. And again, I've been close enough to have seen the signs and feel like that maybe I could have said something or done something to help prevent it. A lot of cases you can't, but they all come back to the same thing, Jamie. It comes back to a change in their family, building pressure, sadness, just general, can't find their way out of things. And most individuals in the construction trade, are male or females, there's a lot of pride. They don't want to say anything and be a burden on anybody, and we have to change that mindset.
It is tough. It's the same happens in the UK. It's pretty much mirrored by the US as well, in the sense of people committing suicide and everything else. And along that topic, you obviously work in the sector, and I know your role's slightly different in the sense you're not necessarily out on site with your hard hat, as a super, but you are very fundamental to that process, and you are in that tight deadline, high pressured environment. How do you, as a leader in your aspect, deal with stress and maintain balance, because it's key?
I that's a great question, because I think I'm still learning that. I First and foremost, my family is first.
Yeah.
So I've I made the decision, 2014. I made a decision that their opinion of me and what they value in a husband and a father matters, and that's still a hard balance to strike. But any business, just like my travels or whatever projects I'm working on, I have learned that I'm going to communicate to my supervisor, is it feasible for me to do or not, based on my family, which is it comes first. And I've also accepted responsibility for myself to say, it's okay not to be perfect. Because I'm absolutely not, but it's
You and me
okay.
too, brother. You and me too.
Yeah, I'm gonna let people down, and I'm going to, be transparent and honest about it. And yeah, I think it's just taking more time to be reflect. And if I'm not in a good spot, I can't help anybody else. And again,
Knowing
like,
when to hold your own water, right, and not take on anybody else's.
yeah,
That's
yeah, and that's
really
hard. I mean, that's incredibly hard. So that's like, I'm still working on it.
yeah.
I'm still
I,
working.
you know what? You and me reflect the same thing, Ben. I'm somebody that's by nature I want to help.
Yeah.
Um, that's why I went into corporate greed and recruitment.
Yeah.
um, I think, but it is still an aspect of helping other people whilst helping myself, right? But I think as a person outside of work, I'm always, I'm the fourth youngest of a five-child family, and yet I seem to be the agony aunt. Everybody's phoning me up with problems and dealing with this and dealing with that. And I remember it was about 4 or 5 years ago. My business partner said to me, like, seriously, like, you need to just basically stop holding everybody else's shit,
Yeah.
because you are swallowing here. I can see you drowning. You're just going to go here because you're carrying too much burden. And it's funny that you don't realize sometimes when your natural instinct is to help,
Yeah.
that sometimes you are taking on far too much weight. And as they say, the straw that broke the camel's back, it only takes that one moment, and
Yeah.
that sends somebody down that spiral. And I've seen that, unfortunately, in my own, personal life and whatnot, people around me that have done that, and it's tough to see. So, yeah, I guess ultimately being able to spot when that you're having a shit
Yeah.
time, and just almost block out and learn to say no, right?
Yeah, that's and that yeah, absolutely. And again, I have some scars. I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate. I feel like the journey into construction was based on God's plan for me, and it's not easy. I mean, there's I gave up a career that I 100% believed I would do for the rest of my life. And I still know that it was a part of my journey, but it was also, like I said, if you look at construction and the fire service to be similar, most individuals get into those trades because they find an interest in something, and it usually starts with the excavator sitting on the job site, So you're buying into these things as a young person with the intent that this is fun and it makes me happy, and I'm excited. I have a son that just started this week, as a matter of fact, with in the construction industry as an intern.
Wow.
He's getting his degree in construction management from Appalachian State, and I met with him last night because he's actually here close by. But he's loving it, and that I remember that, but it carries you to a point in your career, and like I've told him, is you have to, first and foremost, you have to earn the respect of the individuals that you're working with, and you have to earn the respect of the subcontractors that are out there, and you have to be, he's very much like me. He cares.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that my journey I'll be able to tell him, but you have to take care of yourself too. You have to be mindful of your workload. Um, but in general, it's 5 years from now is going to look different than today.
Yeah.
So that's when you start to, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I was that person helping. I really did. I got into training and education because I loved the process. Absolutely just found it the most rewarding thing in the world to see people be successful in their career. I want them to be better than me. I want them to be my boss one day if that's what they aspire to do.
Yeah.
And I've seen the value in allowing them to grow holistically, but I've also learned through my own experiences to also educate them on work-life balance. And, again, back to working with you guys and, even the individuals that have been in it for 25 or 30 years, seeing where they are in their careers and how much work they've already put into it. And like 9 times out of 10, they are coming from a company that they were required to work 60 plus hours a week. And they're looking for something at this point of their career as a work-life balance. And we should value that because they will perform at a high level still if you take that into consideration.
Well, I think you have to. I think it goes back to that old mantra, you've got to, work to live, not live to work. And
Yeah.
I think and oddly enough, we seem to, as a societies, we tend to kind of shift that around a lot as to, whatever seems to benefit the corporate greed of others, I think sometimes
Yeah.
feels like, right? Where, wanting people to work all the hours that God sends in order to facilitate something at the detriment to somebody's own personal health, and it's like, well, that's not necessarily great.
Right.
What's something that I guess you do day to day in your role that people may not know or would be surprised to hear?
Oh wow, that's a good question. Something I do
Don't worry,
day
I've got loads of good questions.
something I do day to day. Well, I'm a multitasker. So I have the unique ability to juggle several balls. I would say primarily right now, today, it's safety, which is always is a key element to anything that I do. But on a daily basis, in my my updated role since January, I answer questions across the platform with all different levels, primarily about safety, some human resources questions. And like today, I will I will actually be at a career fair, standing at a table. I still value the face to face, like what's happening in the world. So I don't know that I don't know if that helped or
Man
not.
of many talents, Ben. A man of many talents. So, if somebody could kind of, I guess, if you would sum up your leadership style and the way that you see your leadership style, what would it be?
Servant leader. That's who I am. Just like you described yourself. That's who I was born as, and my parents raised me to be. And servant leader is, I'm a support to everybody around me to see them be successful. And I value that role. You have to have those people behind you to help at least, and I hope it's valued by others. That's sometimes I'm sure that's out for debate depending on who it is, but servant leadership is
I love that.
important.
I love that. Oddly enough, I've never thought of myself as that, but you said it there, and straight away I thought that is exactly the type of person that I am.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, Jamie, I see it in the culture. Again, that's the thing that made me absolutely buy into what you guys were doing was how you handled your client. It stood out that was the most important person. Yes, I'm important. You have your customer side, but if you value that person, you're vetting that person and you want them to be a reflection of who you are. And again, I still believe that what you guys are doing and the people you're working with, you're not going to win every single person that you put out there, but for the most part you are. I mean, but that valuing that client above all is what makes you guys successful, I believe.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think it's certainly part of our value system, and it's something we always try to aspire to. I think our why is very much aligned to helping everybody that comes into our just family or that we come into contact to basically be better. And that's something that we do believe in, we genuinely do. It leads me into my next question again, right? What do you see as the kind of biggest opportunity that the construction sector can, I guess, the biggest opportunity it has over the next sort of 5 to 10 years? Because, you know, having servant leaders is great, and I think a lot of people probably could learn from that in the construction sector, right? But what do you see as the biggest opportunity that you personally see in construction over the next 5 to 10 years?
The biggest opportunity I see right now is creating the next generation of leaders, 100%, and it's absolutely a must. It has to be done. In the United States right now, I see it across all of our, mechanical, HVAC, plumbing, electrical platforms, that our apprentices are going to be our next leaders. And the reason is that our tenured individuals are at 60 plus years of age right now, and that gap has to be bridged. So I see, and again, I go back to what and there's some companies that are embracing what I'm saying right now, is I see the way that my son has been treated just as an intern in his first week, that they get it. I mean, 100% get it. They are working diligently to educate in these young people, men and women, and they are believing in them, and they're providing guidance to them. Organized guidance and education is going to sustain the construction industry, and it is an absolute must. Unless there is a downturn in the economy, which we all know could happen at any given time, the rate that things are being built, and I don't see it slowing down. We have to have those people. So I see the next 5 to 10 years is that you'll see the next generation of leaders in place, and the younger ones, again, they may, and I don't even know what the generations are anymore, with this Y, Z, X, whatever.
I think that's when you're starting to get to a stage where you're getting older in your life, right? Where you don't know where you are anymore.
That's it. But man, I believe in them. I 100% believe in them, and I also believe in, I see the key. Like I said, there's key individuals right now that I'm seeing at, let's say, 10 to 15 year mark in their careers, that we have to work hard not to burn them out, and to continue to motivate them. And you'll see them, they've bought into the mentorship side, and again, bumper to bumper, they're bringing up those individuals, and we will see the ones that are having a hard time changing the way they came up and the way they continue to manage, that will be gone, because they're going to retire, and there's nothing wrong. I want all of the individuals that work so hard in the industry to retire and be happy. But yeah, to summarize it, you're going to see a solid group of leaders coming through.
Good, that's necessary. And I guess on the flip to that, then, what do you see as something that the industry kind of needs to stop doing in order to move forward?
Stop saying that it's not possible. That is probably the biggest pain in my ass, that again, stop. I'll just cut to the chase. We have to move. We have to, we plan everything out on a job, everything to the letter. We're in this box. We got to do this, but damn, we do not do it for people. We don't have a strategic plan. And again, I'm not speaking for every construction group, but a lot of the ones that I'm seeing, and it has to be very relevant to, they have a hard time planning strategically for these changes. And I have been fortunate, I will preface this, I have been fortunate to see a couple of companies which I am grateful that I can kind of work side by side with, that I've partnered up, who do get it and are trying. But we got to stop saying that this generation coming in, they don't get it, they have no work ethic, the negative talk's got to go away.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, look, I'm I'm certainly somebody that sees both sides to it, right? You know, we've employed a lot of young people and part of our team. Some get it, some don't. And I think something that I've learned as a leader over God knows when it was that I started actually tapping into it, but is that it's the way in which sometimes you're communicating with somebody that's the problem, you know. And I think Michael Jackson said it best when it's, you know, the man in the mirror, and you've got to you have to take a look at yourself first and think, well, okay, yes, they may not have the standard kind of, hey, look, I'll run around and do everything you want me to do, but you've got to tap into the skill set that they have. They've got the technological know-how. They absorb knowledge much faster. You know, they are switched on. They are able and capable, probably at a rate much faster than generations gone by. And I think it's tapping into that. It's learning, you know, what these guys do well in order to kind of enhance what they do, right?
Yeah, it's back to the key thing you said. It's a balance, and let us not forget. You know, when I came into, you know, my initial career in the fire service, it was hardcore. I mean, leadership I had, it was, you know, you didn't get a chance to sugarcoat much or not. You just were told if they stopped talking to you, you're in big trouble. You know, if they were yelling at you, you were doing good. But I don't think that people have changed. I think I came in with individuals that were never going to be worth a damn, no matter what you did with them. You know, they just didn't have a phone in their hand to, you know, to go to. But for the most part, you know, like you said, to your point, they do think differently. I have accepted the fact that I can't keep up with them on those type things. I've reached the point in my career where I'm not going to try. I'm going to leverage whatever that is that you're doing, and we're going to meet in the middle. Because again, the biggest thing in any job in your world too that people have to understand is a two-way street.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that you've had to have those conversations with those individuals that, look, my experience, sit down, listen, you know, this is why. I think we you know, I really try to work on explaining things to people in a manner that gives them the why we're doing this. And the patience in most of, you know, my father's generation, it wasn't there. I mean, you just did what you were told to do. You know, I'm not going to tell you why you do it. You just
look your ass otherwise.
But that is something that I've embraced throughout my years, and I think I've been doing it for a long time. Well, is listening to them, and most of the individuals, and again, I'm talking about, you know, now a group that's 5 years in, you know, that I've been working directly with. They just want to know that they're valued. And what we have to also consider is they do get bored easily, because they are so quick to take information in and solve problems and things.
It's attention, right? They live in the attention world. That's the currency that they have, right? And you've got to adapt into that pretty quickly.
So, you know, again, and there's no perfect formula for it. I just think it starts, like we were talking about earlier, there's times where you have to reset and just take a moment and figure out where you're at in that particular problem, good or bad, and you know, find a way to work through it.
Yeah, I think that's you know, it's fundamental. What legacy did you, Ben, want to leave in the industry when you kind of finally get to that stage of hanging up your dusty boots?
I want to, my legacy that I want to leave is seeing a successful business. To me, it makes me happy, and I'm at a level now where it does have to be about the business as a whole, that they are successful and they have limited turnover. I want to know that I stuck with a culture that reflected well on me.
Yeah. Can't ask for any more than that.
It's a big thing, and like you said, it's like with you guys. I mean, it's a lot of individuals, if they're new to an organization, especially if they're high up, you'll see them start changing branding and this and that. I've never been about that kind of stuff. It's more about, because that's their legacy. The brand is important, it's a reflection, but the culture, whether people have come to work and they're happy. I mean, I think that's an important thing, very much important.
Well, that's the story you want to sell, right? You want to sell a story of happiness for your brand.
Yeah.
That's, I guess the idea of a brand is exactly that. It is a story, right? It's something that it's an intangible thing that we all believe in, and I think that's what creates that culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having that in a positive frame will certainly help. I've got a couple of questions in closing, right? And it's something I tend to ask everybody. If you had a magic wand and could change one single thing now that's going to have the greatest impact on the industry, what would it be?
Right now, if I had a magic wand, it would be open-mindedness to change.
Yeah, I think that's probably, as we've just discussed, for the best part of an hour or so, right? It's
Just a chance, just a chance without resistance. And again, I work my way through it. But a lot of times, if I had that magic wand, just give me a chance, give us a chance to show that. And if it fails, hey, I'll own it all day long. But just open-mindedness, and again, a lot of it is just driven off of the industry, construction. If you ask anyone on a job site, if I was to walk out there today, I can see it in their face whether it's good or bad, right there. So that tends to be the focus, and give us a chance to be proactive. That might be the second wave versus reactive.
Let me spread my wings.
Yeah. Yep.
And lastly, and this is more of a kind of introspective type of question, what one piece of advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back and say, this is the one or something fundamental you think would kind of really add value to you? What would it be?
I would tell them to always go back and remember why you're here. And I know that's a broad answer, but in the moments that my elf was happy and I saw it in their face, I really try at times to reiterate to them that moment. Remember this moment, because there's going to be days where you're challenged and you have to reflect back on that moment of why I'm here. What's my personal reason? What was making me happy? And don't lose sight of that, because that's going to carry you through the hard days.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's something I mentioned to somebody previously on another show, that I said that we tend to look at happiness as a state of mind, like it's a constant, that we always have it, but in reality it's, as my wife likes to call them, glimmers, right?
Yeah.
It's glimmers of moments in your life, and you are right to almost absorb that moment, freeze frame it in time, and store that in the bank for the days where the shit hits the fan and you feel like you want to throw the towel in. I think that's timeless advice.
Well, it's carried me through a whole lot. Again, it's not me. I mean, I really and truly have had some phenomenal mentors in my life, and that's always been one of the key things that they've said. So it works. And again, that the loyalty part to the trades, to construction, is based on when you were that first stepping on that job site, seeing that excavator. Some of them, just that's why you're here. I mean, you gotta remember that, and that hopefully will sustain people, and again, carry them through those tough days, and that day will be over. There's always tomorrow.
Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute privilege and a fantastic conversation.
I've enjoyed it, Jamie, and thank you so much. It's been an honor, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Perfect, good man.
All right.
Thanks, Ben. Cheers, bye.